Hello and welcome to the Pretty Good Gaming Daily Triple. That's your no shit gaming news video. 3 news stories in one video with zero faff. Last week we got the first ever look at the PlayStation 5 and what games we can expect to see on Sony's new system. The stream showed off a number of big AAA games like Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man Miles Morales and Gran Turismo 7, but it also gave the first look at a number of smaller indie titles. One of those games was Little Devil Inside by South Korea-based developer NeoStream, which was one of my personal highlights from the whole showcase. However, some have criticized the game for featuring racist stereotypes. The game has very stylized visuals, which is one of the reasons it looks so appealing, but during one section of the trailer, the character is fleeing from some tribal hunters. It is these hunters that many Twitter activists have taken issue with, specifically in their design, which evokes the look of some traditional African tribes with dark skin, dreadlocks, large lips, and blowpipes. As quickly as this controversy appeared, the South Korean studio addressed it in a long Facebook post. The statement explains that the studio had no intention of portraying racist stereotypes and that these character designs will be altered. Quote, "The focus was on creating colourful masks and our designers were researching masks from all various cultures. As characters in the game, they move in groups and use blow darts that paralyze when hit. We wish to add character to the mask design and give life to it, something like the Kakamora characters in Disney's Moana. For reference, here's what these Kakamora guys look like. We will be making the following fixes to the current characters, but if it ends up not being suitable to the game as a whole, we may change the design entirely. 1. Remove the dreadlocks, 2. Change the bold lips, 3. Change the skin tone, and 4. Tweak the dart blower so it looks less like a joint." Addressing the situation has now sparked more controversy, and many are now upset that the game is being changed as a result of these criticisms. This is NeoStream's first title, so all this says to me that they were afraid of getting bombarded by controversy, so sought to quickly resolve the situation, but unfortunately it may well have had the opposite effect. This may prove particularly problematic since the game has been on Kickstarter since April 2015, and plenty of backers are upset after seeing the game they contributed towards change due to a small Twitter mob. Add to the mix that the game now has a timed exclusivity deal for Sony with the PS5 before it comes to PC as originally promised, and things take an ugly turn for what otherwise looked like a promising new IP. Some are expressing demands for a full refund after feeling misled, and while I totally get that and it's bullshit to pull the rug out on people who helped you get the game to where it is, that is always the risk with Kickstarter projects and it happens all the time. Altogether, this whole situation is just ridiculous in my opinion. I don't think this is racist at all, but I can see that if you're looking for it, you can interpret it that way. But all I see are highly stylized characters wearing masks with exaggerated expressions, just like the Kakamora from Moana as the devs pointed out. All the characters are caricatures across the board, not just these tribal fellas. Just look at the skinny old white guy. What are the odds he's a pompous upper class British guy? Is that racist too? No. No, it isn't. The argument about whether the game is racist or not is one thing, but the part that bothers me most of all is that art is being altered as a result of a loud and vocal minority. It is NeoStream's work, and the team over there should be allowed to create their project however they want to make it, and they shouldn't be changing their art for the sake of Twitter. Once again, this is a tiny moment of a single trailer, irrespective of any context. This reeks of people projecting their own prejudices onto everything else. However, entering an exclusivity deal with Sony, which flies in the face of thousands of backers, is never going to sit well with me, even if I do like the look of the game. Signing with Sony will get the studio a bunch more money, which may well make the game better in the long run, but this shouldn't come at the expense of your loyal backers. What do you think? Is the game racist and should be censored, or is this just art and the creators should be allowed to create what they want? Have the backers been misled and deserve refunds, or should they have known better since this happens all the time with Kickstarter? Next up, as expected, The Last of Us Part 2 has been a resounding success according to most critics of the game, earning it a 96 on Metacritic and the must-play badge. Out of 89 critics at the time of recording, the game only has 3 mixed review scores, all of which land on 70, which still isn't bad. Of those 89, 48 were perfect scores. Major outlets like Push Square, Video Game Chronicle, Games Radar, Screen Rant, IGN, VG247 and Game Informer all gave 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5. If anyone had words like masterpiece on their bingo card, then you're in for the win. All these reviews are linked in the description if you want to read them in full, but long story short, they absolutely loved it. While the main IGN channel in the US gave it a perfect 10 out of 10, IGN Japan was one of the harsher critics, giving it just 7 out of 10. According to Google Translate, writer Fukuyama Koji prefers the original and criticizes the sequel for dirty storytelling and that it was held back by the success of the first game. Each of the new characters has become a hindrance to storytelling, and the storyline-based storyline created by making Ellie the hero is far from the success of their previous work. However, he did still call it good with a 7 out of 10 score and praised the stealth and combat. The story seems to be the most divisive aspect of the game so far, which really isn't surprising given the mixed response to the the leaks, so you'll just have to make up your own damn mind. Another more negative review comes from Gaming Bible, who also awarded it 7 out of 10 and called it very good but criticized the story and its pacing. As a video game sequel, it ticks all the boxes of being bigger and better with more to say, but as a story, as an experience following one of the most critically acclaimed tales ever told in this medium, it sits uncomfortably on a knife's edge, waiting for the passage of time to pull it one way or another. That just sounds to me like this guy couldn't make up his mind and is waiting for what other people think. Next up is Polygon, which doesn't give review scores and therefore won't affect the Metacritic rating, as I've seen some people complaining about, was more negative than you might expect and heavily criticized the game's use of violence and the player's lack of choice in the matter. Personally, I don't think writer Maddie Meyer's review is very good, not because it's critical, but because it focuses too much on just one point. Part 2 ends up feeling needlessly bleak at a time when a nihilistic worldview is perhaps never been less attractive. Its characters are surviving, but they're not learning, and they're certainly not making anything better. As a critique of the game's depiction of violence as a theme, it's certainly an interesting piece, but as a review, I think it's pretty poor as it barely touches on anything to do with gameplay or mechanics. It focuses almost exclusively on how the game makes you feel bad for doing things, but doesn't give you any option to do otherwise. Kotaku, which again doesn't give a score, was also fairly negative. Contrasting the opinion of some other outlets, Kotaku's Riley McLeod liked the slow pace, but criticized the game's violence much in the same way as Polygon. It's a visually beautiful game that feels distinct to play, and the story it tells and how it tells it at the most basic level certainly pushes the edges of what games have done before. None of those accomplishments elevated or redeemed it for me. Like the nature consuming Seattle or the outbreak consuming humanity, its ugliness overshadowed everything else. Another much more positive review came from Eurogamer's Ollie Welsh, who gave it the Essential badge. The thing that really struck me, and pleasantly surprised me, coming as it does from a developer so transparently in love with the language of cinema, is that The Last of Us Part 2's power is wholly unique to it being a video game. There's a special kind of empathy that develops between a player and game protagonist that no other medium can reproduce. It's this bond that Druckmann and his team have exploited to such devastating effect. One of the most negative reviews out there that isn't present on Metacritic is from YouTuber SkillUp, who went so far as to say he hated it, and many online now hail him as the only real reviewer out there. Throughout the video, he speaks very highly of the presentation and visuals, but is less keen on the gameplay and lack of puzzles, believing that the game could have been so much more and even feels last gen at times, despite the fact he enjoyed the expanded level design. He also massively criticizes the story and the new characters, saying that they actively detract from what made the original game great. However, while SkillUp is one of the most critical about the game, he recently shared these tweets which I think make an excellent point about this game. Not everyone who likes the game is a paid shill, neither is everyone who dislikes it a hater. Reading and watching different reviews from different people, not just those who confirm your impressions, is the best way to judge something until you can play it for yourself. In an attempt to reduce spoilers, these reviews have been under firm embargo restrictions, so it will be interesting to see how the conversation evolves once these reviewers can really let loose on what they were forbidden to discuss. And finally, in what is probably the longest daily triple yet, we've seen the PS5 specs, we've seen the games, we've seen the look, now we just need to see the price. The PS5 price will be talked of as one of the great riddles of the 21st century, and CEO Jim Ryan is still no closer to answering it. Speaking to the BBC, Ryan said, "I emphasize value as opposed to price. We must be more attentive than before to ensure that the overall value proposition in terms of the console and the games, the range of games, the quality of games, the quantity of games, makes this something that our community aspires towards." That sounds to me like a roundabout way of saying it's going to cost you a kidney or two, but I promise all of our games will make up for it. I don't know if I'm quite willing to sell an organ to play on something that looks like a router, but what do you think? Are you on team router with Sony, or are you on team fridge with Xbox? And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this no shit format, go ahead and give the video a like to give it a boost, hit subscribe and the bell if you want to stay up to date on all future installments, toss a coin to your YouTuber over at patreon.com/prettygoodgaming. I've been Henry Cooper, that's all for today, bye for now.